Welcome to the CGI versus practical effects panel. And just want to say on the outset, this is not a real fight. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but that's the way we're going with it. I'm Bill Mulligan, local filmmaker. Could you introduce yourself, Christine Parker?
Yes, I'm Christine Parker, and I run Sick Chick Flicks Productions and the Sick Chick Flicks Film Festival.
Thank you. Chris Moore?
I'm Christopher G. Moore, director of Backward Creep and Gut Punched, Knob Goblins, Disengaged.
Tom Gore?
Tom Gore, actor, filmmaker, never do well.
We all know that. Sierra Dahl?
I am Sierra Dahl. I do special effects makeup and I sculpt things. That's pretty much it.
And Richard Claiborne?
Richard Kleba. I've been a cinematographer and director and general filmmaker for most of my life.
So all of us have been involved in indie films, and Richard in professional films as well. So CGI versus practical effects. So just in case folks are new to this, CGI, computer-generated images, the kind of thing you would associate with a lot of the big blockbusters that you have today. It's what makes the Hulk nowadays, as opposed to the old days where we just took a bodybuilder and painted him green. That would be a practical effect, an effect that is done in camera, that is actually a physical thing that you can feel. And there's obviously a lot of crossover. And I guess just to throw the first thing out, which do you prefer?
Depends on the budget. If I had a huge budget, I might go for some CGI stuff if I had a really professional person that could do good CGI effects. But for low budget films, practical effects. And, it depends on the practical effects. Some of them hold up much better than CGI effects do, I believe.
Yeah. Now, Christopher, in Knob Goblins, Knob Goblins got a lot of credit for having great practical effects, but there was some CGI in that too. Do you find that you like to put some stuff in there to sweeten up the limitations of practical?
I prefer to do as much practical as possible, but I do realize you have limitations of what you can do. Because even films out there you think have no like CGI effects have them. The movie Parasite actually has CGI in it. They have a lot of background replacement in certain scenes that you don't even notice. And I think you have filmmakers like Guillermo del Toro that finds that happy place between the two where you can sort of meld the two. Backward Creep, we don't have any CGI, but
really,
all of it's practical, except for maybe just scenes where you reverse it to get to a certain effect or you speed up stuff. But Knob Goblins, in fact, Tom will remember this. Knob Goblins, we had one scene where the creature drops down behind Michael Williams, who was our actor in that, drops down behind him. And it was also crawling on the ceiling. And we really didn't have a practical way to do that other than having the biggest guy available, Tom Gore, dressing all in black like a chubby ninja, and
wow,
and
chubby ninja,
and holding it and moving it, and so we had to do like a clean plate of the area that we're shooting. Then we had to basically rotoscope that. Well, my DP Ish had to rotoscope it because I tried it and I just gave up, and I was like, Ish, can you do this? And he fixed it. So that was basically the only CGI shot, which actually looks pretty darn good when you see it. You don't really notice it. It's very convincing. And Tom Gore was in it. He doesn't even remember himself in it now.
Yeah.
I'm in the scene and I don't see me.
I know. We CGI'd his memory as well.
Yeah, that kind of brings up, there's a lot of crossover here. I guess I normally would not think of doing mats, rotoscoping and everything as CGI, but in a sense it kind of is. It's just that it's so labor intensive. It feels more like a practical effect, even though it's done completely in digital. Tom, you've probably got one of the biggest IMDb credits of anyone around here. Have you had much experience with films that were done with a good deal of CGI?
Sadly, no. is as crazy as it is, you have to have your own CGI team. And now all the studios are outsourcing to multiple CGI teams, and each department is taking care of a certain block of scenes. And if you're not in that group, if you're not in that clique, that work is going to pass by you, because they're only going to stick with who they trust to deliver those scenes.
Now, Sierra, you are an amazingly talented makeup effects artist. When you're, don't get shy. When you're watching a film, does it take you out when you see when you see something that's clearly computer generated, or do you, or maybe on the other hand, when you see some practical effects that maybe aren't quite as good as they could be, does that take you out because you know how it's done?
I love it all. So no, I thoroughly enjoy the really bad, like, special effects. Not that I'm saying the original Evil Dead had like bad effects, but they were sort of silly at times. I love it. Absolutely love it. And if we would try to recreate that now, it would look silly, but it didn't work then. But I feel like we need CGI, even if we just mix it with the practical effects, like make 20 characters and then multiply them so we have an army. We can't do that. There's no way that I could go on set and make 1,000 or 50 orcs in a time frame that would make sense in order to do something tangible. Like, it just wouldn't work. So I like it all.
Yeah. Richard, you've done a lot with both. What's, as a professional, you're directing films?
It depends on the effect and what you're doing with it. I have two big stories to go with this one. But the first commercial feature I did as a director was a film called Python. And I was lobbying to get a practical big-ass snake in there. And basically, there was two reasons we sort of half did and didn't. First is that the company that was doing it had a visual effects digital department, but they didn't have an effects department that does physical makeup things and all this. And then the budget when we got a great quote to do a practical snake, but they cut them down to like 1/16 of what they said they needed to do it. So we ended up with a big snake head, which I still thought looked pretty darn good. But then in the course of doing the CG effects, they kept evolving the look of the snake. And that's one of the great things about CG. You can keep sculpting it and say, that's not looking good, change it like this. And if you have a practical it has to match to, it doesn't match. And so that was a factor. The place I most like to use CG judiciously is in doing stunts, because I like the stunts to be done real. We did in the film Iborgs, we had a guy do a high fall from a top balcony level thing and do like a 5-story fall. And one of the producers was telling me, just do it on CG, just green screen it, it'll be much better. It's like, no, I feel like you can tell when a person is supposed to be doing that. So we had him fall, but he was on a descender cable. And the only thing we did CG was we erased the cable and we erased the mat in the shot looking down. So basically all we used CG for was to erase the safety equipment. And then the person could really do the stunt, really do it for real. And we just removed the safety gear, but it was still safe to do it. That to me is hitting the sweet spot on stuff where you're still doing it, but you're making it safe.
Yeah, good point. I think it was it Christopher brought up the fact that there's so much CGI that we're not even aware of. You're watching just a show like CSI, one of the police procedurals, and it's a scene of nothing more than people leaving a courtroom and crossing the street. Looks perfectly normal, and then you find out none of that was real. It was cheaper for them to create a street and a courthouse and all these people doing this than it was to actually go out and stop the streets and everything. So there's probably way more out there well done than we're aware of.
If I can just jump in, you only notice that, but I have like I have multiple credits as a visual effects supervisor. It's the other thing I do. And I would say if you looked at the last 5 films, you get to the end of the movie and say, wait, what did you do anywhere in there? Because they're straightforward dramas. There's no killer robots. There's nothing strange. You would have no idea the large number of effects we did, because they're invisible effects, which is funny. If you don't put them on a before after reel, nobody knows you did it, because you point it out and it's like, wow, look at what we did here. And it's like, you see nothing.
Yeah.
Good effects.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You shouldn't call attention to it. You shouldn't,
For-
notice it. if
For
it's bad.
Christine and Christopher, you've both shot films that use a lot of practical effects. What would, if you'd had the resources to use more computer generated, what would have been different about, say, Blood of the Mummy or Knobgoblins or Backward Creep? If you'd had the resources to do it, what is there things that you definitely would have put in there that you just, couldn't?
More blood.
More blood. Yeah.
Yeah.
With blood. Movie.
Although you have to really watch one of my very first films was called Bursters,
Yeah.
and because we shot it in a public park that we didn't have a permit for, I didn't want to leave blood everywhere, so I did a bunch of CGI blood, and I remember a film festival called me out on that and made me a little bit more specific. And then when you start using certain types of blood assets to create more blood, then you realize how many people use those when you see other people's films. They use a lot of the same type of thing. So after a while, you have to do a really good job of either blending, your own type of things that you create and not just using assets that a lot of other people use. Like there's a YouTube site called, I think it's called Corridor Digital, where they sit there and they react to special effects and stunts and that kind of stuff. And I didn't realize, what was it? The Sherlock Holmes one with Robert Downey Jr., the second one, there's a part where they're running through the woods and they do it in very like slow motion. And there's a bullet that goes past him and grazes his clothing and shoots through it. That was an actual bullet. What they did was they actually had a dummy that they shot a bullet through the clothing, and they used CGI to put that on top of him. So they actually shot real assets, which made it very realistic when you watch it. It was the actual bullet because they shot it in such a slow motion, so many frames per second that allowed him to create that shot. So yeah, I think you have to figure out a way to meld the two to where it's not as obvious. I think that's one thing sometimes when I see certain horror films where you can see they added the blood assets and they really don't know how to do a good job of blending it in the environment, blending it in the light, the viscosity of it, those type of things. It kind of shows, especially if they do it after the which it's kind of sad for movies you really love and you see that one thing. That's the one thing that kind of spoils it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I'd like to jump just one comment on the blood. Is like I got to say that is a really good example of something that saves you a ton of time on set. If you're going to put blood on a person's costume, you have to have multiples of the costume. Every time we do a take, if you're going to have blood hit the wall behind them,
Sure.
pretty much as possible avoid doing blood on set these days because the time to reset and time on set is so expensive that we end up doing blood in post just because we can immediately go again with another take and not have to do cleanup on anything, which becomes a real cost and time saver thing.
I think that's a great point. Imagine having to do, you set up James Caan to be shot up in The Godfather, 100 bullet hits all over him, and then Francis Ford Coppola, says we got to do it again. That's hours of setting up James Caan to be shot again.
Right.
Yeah, although there's a movie called Nightmare Cinema that's all these individual segments that are directed by different directors, and there's one segment they actually shot in a real church where they shoot movies, and they actually they killed like a bunch of kids in this church, and there's blood going everywhere, and the priest that owned it didn't have a problem with it at all, and they had like blood spots on the walls and stuff. But I don't know. I think you always want that little bit of extra money to sort of sell an effect, and you can hope that the practical parts of it. I know with Knobgoblins, the one thing that still irks me, I wish we had a little bit more mobility with the creature and had him moving around a little bit more. And a lot of times you can, which actually Bill created the creature for that, and we actually
that's why he couldn't move.
Well, but you did create the little screw hole so you could stick rods in it. And stuff,
but they didn't work quite as.
It didn't work, and so you sort of want that. Although I think in the future, I know some people that create like a robotics, and maybe we can create a more robotic version of it.
That'd probably be the way to go. The best part about having the practical knobby effect was the fact that for the next year or two, you carried him around wherever you went, having
Like a
that
pet.
practice like a pet, it was actually kind of alarming. There, I cannot believe that he has held up that long.
Well, he has been glued a few times.
Been patched up.
I've done a little bit of dentistry on him.
Oh, the dentistry. Wait, hold that up again, just to show you this thing. Okay, this is styrofoam, lots of latex, a little bit Model Magic teeth. Now, Sierra, you can back me up. Model Magic, not exactly the most durable art form out there.
No, but I was thinking that plastic you got that you were going to put on my face instead of the alginate or whatever.
Oh, whoa.
What was he gonna do to you?
He was taking a cast in my face, and he has a box of the silicone casting material. He has a box of plastic, like something you would like gild, but with plastic.
It looked alarmingly like the same thing. They really need to color code these better.
The same, and he almost put the plastic on my face instead. But if you were to take and coat that Model Magic or even his dummy in that stuff, I bet it would be good to go.
She only brings up that story because she almost sent an elevator crashing down on top of me. So,
We almost mangled each other.
Yeah,
but we
so-
both given to the thing.
now we're even.
Tell
Although-
my story.
I will
You
say
almost put it in my face.
the end of, which I don't want to spoil it too much, but the end of Backward Creep, I was kind of surprised we were able to pull it off because it's a very complicated
It is.
effect that originally we were going to do a little bit of CGI with like moving eyeballs and stuff. But we actually, through editing and other things, we sort of were able to make it as good as it turned out. So I'm really happy with it. But
It looks fantastic. I mean, if you're talking about making this into a feature, and we don't want to give away anything, but with more of a budget, you could sweeten that up with a little bit of CGI. But
There's
it's
a
the
little hint
practical
right
that
there.
really. Oh, there we go. Yeah, the practical really sells it, and it's so cool. Also, when we saw it at the Alamo Draft House, to be able to go actually kind of play with the props. I guess that's part of what I really like about practical is being able to play with the props. Yeah, there you are.
It's the practical means it's real. It's tangible, and it gets rid of that layer of, oh, it's fake, it's digital, and it gives it this reality to it that actually gets it one step further into your audience's head, that this is real, this is happening.
Well, also as an actor, it helps you, right? To see it and hold it and to be around it when you're acting, I'm assuming.
Well, that's excellent question, Sierra. For Tom, how easy is it to act to things that are not there?
If you have to act opposite a tennis ball, like Shia LaBeouf in all the Transformers movies, bring that up because Chris loves Shia LaBeouf. He loves him.
Although I did appreciate him a little bit more after seeing Honey Boy, but still, yeah, I don't like him.
It is definitely a skill, and you see some folks have it and some folks don't. I don't know if was it Kerwin Matthews in Seventh Voyage of Sinbad? Not the greatest actor who ever lived, but he did have one gift, which is that he really, when he's fighting like the skeleton that Ray Harryhausen created, he wasn't fighting anything at all, but he managed to look like he was looking at something right in front of him. Yeah, and not everyone can pull that off.
That is half the challenge, is making it believable that you're actually connecting with whatever mood, whatever emotion, with whatever you're feeling with your scene partner. And if your scene partner is the CGI construct, this tennis ball to be added an effect later, this giant alien robot, a skeleton from one of the masters, that it's a challenge.
Now it's pretty easy to tell to explain why a practical effect doesn't look good. You can see the zipper on the monster's back, or the fur bunches up, the blood is the wrong color. I don't know how they still get that wrong. But that with CGI, sometimes you're looking at it, and I'll just throw a movie out there, Van Helsing. It cost a fortune. I mean, they spent a lot of money on it. The people who worked on it were not amateurs, and yet there was individual shots and just whole sequences that just did not work. What is it? Let me just ask everyone, what is it that takes you out? That just when you see bad CGI or obvious CGI, what is the thing that makes it bad, that makes it obvious?
Physics, lighting, shading, texturing are all qualities of light in the way they are. But then when things move in ways that they couldn't, like in Van Helsing, he swings on a big cable at one point, and it's like, I remember looking at that and saying, it just didn't look real, in part because the physics of it just was dead wrong. And, you know, that combined with the way light interacts with things, especially complex things, it's really hard to make happen in a computer what happens naturally in the world sometimes.
Alien 3 does the same thing. The way they lit the xenomorph, it's, you know, it's two-dimensional. You know, it's a flat construct in it. There's no shape to it. There's no depth to it. It's just this karate chop of a creature that they try to pass through, and it fails, and it takes you out, because the whole reason why you're watching Alien is for the alien.
Yeah, that's a good example, because otherwise it's a good movie, but the alien does look like it's a couple of renders short of a final render.
And the first one, it was completely real. I mean, they used just all practical. They didn't have CG as an option in the first one, and it looks awesome.
Yeah, it's required viewing.
Yeah, it was also, I mean, much like with Nabi, it had its limitations, and I've seen some behind the scenes shot where they showed it full on and the person moving around, and it's awful looking. So they used angles, they used close-ups, they edited it to get away from some of those deficiencies. I remember watching it, and I was never really clear what the creature fully looked like until the very end of the movie.
Well, that's good, because too much would make it have less impact, you know.
Do you think that's a problem, that having the ability to make a computer generated monster in all of its glory, doing all the things that no practical could do, makes them do that, and that takes away maybe some of the mystery of it?
Well, I think that's, but here's the thing. It's like, I think that's the problem they run into. It's like, once you have a CGI ability to do anything, you don't really have limitations on how you shoot it or whatever. And I think back in the day, I mean, for instance, let's talk about the practical effects film that's one of the best ever made, The Thing. You know,
Oh yeah,
they had to create certain effects for certain shots. They were limited in how they can shoot it, but they shot the best, you know, of each of those angles to really sell what you're seeing. You know, because you know, whether it's the spider leg head or, you know, the hands to the chest, all those things were individual effects things that they had to set up for specific shots, and the effects people work with them. With CGI, they just shoot a clean plate, or they just create a CG environment and they throw it in there, and they really don't think about the cinematography involved with really selling that, you know. And I think that's sometimes, you know, I think that's to the detriment of what the story that you're telling. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw like the prequel thing movie they made, where
I was just going to mention that.
If you saw all the effect stuff they created for it, that was some pretty amazing stuff. But then whenever, like, no, let's cover it up with CGI. Let's redo it all with CGI, and it made it more fake, you know, than the physical things. I mean, yeah, you have certain limitations on certain things. I mean, and some things you sort of you go like Total Recall, where Arnold Schwarzenegger's face is all, you know, moving and eyeballs popping out. It's not, but I believe that a little bit more than just some CGI replication of Schwarzenegger's head.
Yeah.
Sierra, you just went through the Lord of the Rings movies, and you were mentioning to me there was one computer effect that kind of stood out as not working.
Legolas looked crazy in the Hobbit movies. And I've never watched them before, and I know that's going to kill some people that I've never watched Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit movies until last week. But watching all of the Lord of the Rings and all of the Hobbits, Legolas looked crazy. He had like a weird angelic light around him, and I don't know if it's because he's an elf, but none of the other elves were crisp, and it was just very off-putting. And I don't think that our human brains are meant, you know, I don't care how many edibles you've eaten, If you watch Resident Evil the Hobbit movies, there's nothing that's going to make that seem right in your brain, like just on a basic level, like at the end of Krampus where they're in the snow globe and they realize they're in hell. That's how you can eat as many edibles as you want, and you watch The Hobbit, and there's nothing. It's just going to hit you, and you're like, this is not right. And it was weird. It was really.
I wonder why they did that. Because he didn't look that way in the Lord of the Rings. He was clearly played.
I really don't know how. I should know more about, but I just watched it though. But how many years it was until they made The Hobbit, I don't know. Did
So maybe the actor aged and they were de-aging him,
which he's allowed to age. But like, I don't know how many. Like, what did Orlando Bloom look like for them to have to do that? And also, Legolas was chunky in that movie. I mean, same, but like he was like chubby, and I'm like, this is weird.
Well, that movie, they used a whole lot more CGI, and I don't know if part of it had to do with Peter Jackson originally wasn't supposed to do it. Guillermo del Toro was supposed to make the Hobbit movies.
Oh wow.
And I mean, I think one of the shots that really stood out to me is the part where the dwarves are like going down the river in the barrels, and he's running over them, and it looks like a bad video game at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It looks more like a cutscene from a PS4 game than a movie. And I think that's what kind of felt sad to me, because if you look at those first Lord of the Rings films, Peter Jackson had basically created the best way to film something is the use of practical effects, either that through actual illusions to create characters big or small, but at the same time using bigatures, which is the bigger version of the miniatures, to create sets, and then incorporating a little bit of CGI to sort of sell it. But it seemed with the Hobbit movies, it seemed to be a little bit more full-on CGI, and I think that it took away the fantasy element of it because the CGI was so prominent.
Bigatures. I've never heard that term before, and that's perfect.
Yeah, it's actually, if you look at the behind the scenes stuff on the Lord of the Rings things, which I have all the special editions where you watch it, that was a term they created where they made these huge versions of like the buildings and stuff so they could film it and make it very cinematic. But they call it bigatures because it's not like some miniature you put on your table. These are like could fill your own house,
That's cool. So here's a question I had. This is a puzzle to me. The movie that really got this all going. People can argue what was the first film to have CGI, Tron or something earlier, but the film that really made it as the special effect technique was Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And to this day, Jurassic Park still has some of the best CGI. It was the first, and usually when you're the first, you're not going to be very good. One of the things about being the first, no one expects you to be that good. But Jurassic Park's effect, it still holds up to this day. We just binged all the Jurassic Park movies except for the last one because my wife hates it. The first one, to me, still has the best effects. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Anyone? If you disagree with me, disagree with me. To me, it is by far the most successful of all the films.
No doubt that it looks good. They put a lot of work into it, and they knew that they had to really make it work and really make it sell. The first CG stuff is actually sort of credited to young Sherlock Holmes, the sword fight, the stained glass window thing. That's kind of one of the first things. The first film that did a ton of it, nobody talks about much, was The Last Starfighter.
Yeah.
Which really was the first one where they did like all miniature sets and things like, I mean, they the whole ships and all that. That was one of the first ones. Doesn't hold up super well today. But yeah, Jurassic Park, they showed Steven Spielberg the stuff from young Sherlock Holmes and talked about what they think they might be able to do with the stuff they were doing. They were also inventing morphing at that moment for Willow, for the scene where the witch is transforming everybody into things. And that was the first time morphing showed up in anything. But yeah, at the time, it was like the moment they felt they could finally make it work and look real. And you're right, Bill, it does. It still looks real today. I watched it recently, and it's like 99% of it holds up really, really well.
Yeah. It might be because so much of the effects actually were the animatronics. And
especially that T-Rex head.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing, I mean, whether it's some of the Raptor stuff And they also just figured out good scenarios that they could light it well to sort of sell the shots in that.
I would say two other things that really matter a lot is one, having a director who was committed to making sure it was good and works and has a good eye and doesn't wait. And secondly, he had the resources, the budget, and the studio who would help him. If he says it's not right, we're going to keep doing it until it's right. And very few filmmakers have that unlimited resource and support.
Let me throw this out there just for everyone get a shot at it. Your favorite practical effect and your favorite CGI effect. Just and out. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just give mine quickly. My favorite practical effect, this is going to sound silly, but it's one of the few I ever saw get applause from the entire audience, was in the Muppet movie when Kermit the Frog is riding the bicycle.
Yeah.
Because up to that point, the only Muppets we'd ever seen were always like, you know, on a log or behind a desk or something, where obviously there was a hand up their rear end doing things. And now suddenly Kermit is riding a bicycle with no strings, no mechanics, and everyone started applauding because they realized that this movie was going to be something we hadn't seen before, and it just was so delightful. Everybody just lost their stuff. It's remarkable. And I guess my favorite, I'm having a hard time thinking of my favorite CGI effect. I'm sure it's just something. I mean, I get, you know, the final sequence in Avengers Endgame, the final battle. Tom got us tickets. We were there opening night, sitting almost in the front row, 3D. And I've never been with an audience that was so happy, sad, in the moment. Everyone was just having a great time. And it felt like probably 9/10 of what we were seeing was made in a computer. But they made it work. I mean, we cried when computer generated, I guess I shouldn't spoil it for any idiot who hasn't seen it yet. Somebody died and we were really sad about it. and you know, none of it was real. It was all artificial. Some of the characters were 100% artificial. Some of the things there, but we felt it. They really made it work. So I guess if you have $300-400 million, you can make CGI hit the audience hard. Christine, what are your favorites?
Well, my favorite practical effects sequence was in Dead Alive, when they're when they have that party and all hell's breaking loose.
Slipping on the blood.
Oh, I just love that whole sequence. It was really well done. I wonder how many times it took them to shoot that. As far as CGI goes, I think the first one that really blew me away was Life of Pi.
Oh, good choice.
That was amazing. Yeah, I love that.
Good choice. I know.
It looked real, really real. Yeah.
I was going to ask, and you can throw this in there too. Are there any films that just could not have been made without it? And clearly, you know.
Oh yeah, that would be one.
Most of the actors would have been eaten by tigers. If
Yes.
tried.
Yeah.
Christopher.
It's tough. I mean, I guess I'll just have to go to my mainstay, and I love the scene in The Thing when he's trying to bring the guy back to life, and his hands go in,
Yeah, that is.
and
great.
it chomps him off, and then he transforms. I think that's probably one of the best practical effect scenes in the history of movies, in my opinion. And I every time I watch it, it's still very powerful. As for CGI, I don't know. I think when it comes to use of CGI, I like it when they can do something that you probably couldn't do practically. And I love Doctor Strange. There's a scene where he sort of goes off in this sort of multi-dimensional area, whatever, and just the visuals of that. It's so very trippy and kaleidoscopy. And I think that's something that you can only create in a CG environment. That's probably and probably as someone that grew up watching Tron, I kind of like the Tron sequel, how they sort of were able to sort of take that technology and create something cooler with that. So I do like that. Other than the really bad Jeff Bridges CGI face, which is horrible.
Tom.
All right. One of my favorite practical effects, 1979 Superman, Christopher Reeve flying.
Hmm.
It's him flying, and that's it. I believe he's flying, and that's 100%. Every time I see it, it's a guilty pleasure to watch. I own it, and and just going across the screen, he's flying, and you can't beat it.
You wear your Superman
To this
outfit
day.
when you watch it?
I'm in my Superman underoos.
I don't want I want that visual in my head.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Oh, you don't want the visual if he isn't wearing his underoos. There we
It doesn't look like that, but I do got a butt cape.
go. Nice.
Oh,
Well, hey, that was a selling point for the movie. You'll believe a man can fly.
And, and it's true. It's legit. Now my favorite CGI sequence was the first Avengers battle in New York against the Chitauri when Mark Ruffalo turns from Cap and transforms and morphs into the Hulk. Or Bruce into the Hulk. That's my secret. I'm always angry. And the blend is there. It still holds up. And okay, it's been 8 years ish, but it's still solid. That it doesn't pixelate. It doesn't turn into a JPEG. It's really well crafted and done. All the physics are there.
A couple of you have brought up morphing, and I will agree. That's if there's one effect that CGI has just absolutely made perfect, it's morphing, which in the old days was pretty dreadful. It was, usually, turning into a werewolf was just a series of dissolves or something. Unless you had Rick Baker or some other genius working with it, it wasn't easy. It's too bad the werewolf costumes usually aren't that good anymore.
I forget there is an old black and white film where they actually put certain makeup on the
Red
actor,
light, blue light.
and
Yes. I love that effect.
and that's a in camera practical effect
Right.
that still is freaky to watch now.
Yeah, I want to use it one day. The only problem, it has to be a black and white film.
Yeah.
Has to be black
It's a
and white.
marvelous effect. If you ever watch the Frederick March, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they use it to good effect there too. Sierra, your favorite practical and favorite CGI effects?
My favorite horror is body horror, when they're all morphing the thing, society, when they're like
Oh wow, yeah.
freaking out and they're laying on each other and they're starting to stick and their head starts coming out of each other's ass and stuff. That's dope. And it'd have to be between that and I really like Frank's meat suit from Hellraiser. I watched it when I was really, really, really little, 6 or 7. And I really loved Frank. He was disgusting and he was juicy and was that CGI when he started came from bones and that drop of blood went on him and he turned into a full corpse? I don't know. I don't really pay much attention to CGI because when I watch movies I look for practical effects because that's what I'm passionate about. But really love Frank's meat suit, really love Slither. And Slither has CGI in it.
It does.
Also body horror, but they're also practical effects when they're taking their clothes off and laying down on him and they're starting to morph into him. I love all of that disgusting stuff. It makes me happy.
Yeah. Richard.
Favorite CG effects were the first time I saw the morphing stuff, but I would say in the abyss with the pseudopod thing,
Yeah.
that blew me away the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
And then the modification that grew from that with in Terminator 2 with the liquid metal robot that you were able to do, that blew me away. And then I think bullet time,
Oh, excellent.
in the Matrix movies. First time I saw that was now mind you, I saw it again recently and it became so overused and cliched and things like this that, it lost its freshness. But the first time you ever saw that was wow, how did they do that?
Yeah.
It was
that
amazing.
cool.
For practical effects, here's a weird one. The Omen with Gregory Peck and Lee Remick, the Richard Donner Omen, which also Richard Donner directed Superman, the Christopher Reeve one. But in the first Omen movie, they didn't do anything CG. And one of the things they did was they're attacked by these dogs in the graveyard. And they made dog head puppets that matched. And so as they're trying to climb the fence, they're being attacked by the dogs, and they have wide shot stuntman climbing the fence. And then it cuts a close-up with Gregory Peck and a snarling dog grabbing him and it's a dog puppet doing that. And that was just perfectly effective in selling that. And then another effect that they did that was really great, and I use this in Stunt Talks, is when Lee Remick falls, she's standing on a ledge and she falls to the floor in slow motion. The way they did it is, first they had the floor down, they had a high angle shot, they dropped a fishbowl on it, so it dropped in slow motion and shattered. They glued the pieces, they took that floor piece, put it up on the wall, put Lee Remick on a sliding thing, and then she just goes, ah, and she's standing on something, so it looks like you established the height of the fall with the thing, took the floor, turned it onto a wall piece, and then just slid her towards it, and it looks like you just watch her falling from a close-up into actually impacting the floor. And It was done by sliding her sideways.
Oh my God, I can see that in my head now.
That's
That
so
never
cool.
occurred to me ever. I've got to go rewatch that now.
You ruined it for me. I believe that was real.
But those are practical effects that are just really being inventive and clever, and I love those kind of effects.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's really cool. Let's see. I guess we're coming up near the end. I guess one question is, you mentioned bullet time. That was another example where the audience you could hear we were seeing something we'd never seen before. Are we going to ever, or the first Star Wars, when that ship goes across and my world changed? That, I was a big special effects buff and I'd never seen anything like this. And I knew I was in for 90 minutes of absolute amazement. I'd read the book and knew, I said, it's going to be great, but there's no way they can make the book because you can't do that. And I saw that ship go across and I was like, oh my God, they're going to make that book. Are we ever going to get that again? Is it even, now that everything is possible, is anything astonishing? Is anything going to blow us away now that we've kind of been trained to think these guys can make whatever our imaginations want? Which is a good thing, but go ahead, Chrissy.
Maybe when Elon Musk does his film in outer space, that would be kind of groundbreaking.
The new Dune, that will be, yes, Chris, totally. That I'm calling that one. The new Dune one that comes out, yes.
They've
That's
tried
going
so
to be
many times to
fantastic.
make Dune.
It's going to be fantastic.
You seem skeptical, Christopher.
I'm not a big fan of Dune stuff in general, but I don't see that. The little bits and pieces I see of it,
more spice to it.
Yeah, it's going to be more Battleship Earth and Dune. I think.
It's horrible.
Although I will say, like, we sit here and we think, oh, what we need. Are we going to be blown away by stuff? And I think every once in a while I'm blown away by stuff. I mean, if you're into action films, go watch the Raid films.
Yes.
How they shoot action is pretty amazing. In fact, even though it's sort of it's not tremendous, dramatic wise, but there's a movie called Extraction that's on Netflix.
Yeah.
That has it's shot like it's almost like a 14-minute constant shot. And I was literally, I had a moment where I went, wow, as somebody who's watching it, because there's a scene where he throws this kid he's trying to protect onto the roof of another building, and then he jumps, and then the cameraman jumps, and I'm like, whoa! And they were following this cameraman as the action's going on, and the camera. I mean, they hide the edits, but there's stuff that happens in the camera that I'm sure some of it's CGI and stuff, but some of it's practical fighting and stuff because they had to choreograph it all. And to me, it's pretty amazing. It's still a color by numbers story, but that 14-minute scene actually blew me away. So I think there's the ability to do that, especially when you can create stuff in camera. Yeah, and they're also creating better and better practical effects. You can go on Instagram. I've seen some amazing stuff just by the way people paint their faces that looks like an illusion of something. So I think there's the ability to do that, even though we've become very jaded in this, we're like the Roman emperor, like, oh, show me something, but I think there's the ability to be shocked and wowed when you're not looking for it.
I want to chime in on that. Just like, yeah, I think we're definitely going to be shocked and wowed in the future, and it will come unexpectedly. And it will come from someone who's like watching something like this right now, because suddenly they're going to see a new way of doing something with something new that's available and a way they can suddenly do it. And it's just going to be a great idea somebody has. And it's just, there's always filmmakers coming up with fresh ideas, and, you know, somebody coming up is going to be the next one who comes up with the next bullet time or the next morph or whatever to serve a function in a story. And they'll suddenly have available something we don't have right now, because it's doable and it'll happen. But yeah, I'm sure we have yet to be surprised by what's
Actually, to add to that, The Mandalorian, I think, has probably one of the most revolutionary things that's ever been created. If you guys have Disney Plus,
Yes.
go and watch the gallery, the Disney gallery, and they actually go behind the scenes and they show that LED screen, which I mean, you see the director on set, and he looks like he's out in the desert just by the way it throws light on the actors. That is the new bullet time, I think. That is the most amazing thing, to where I'm sure any of us as filmmakers would love to have that in our backyard.
Oh, yes.
Because you'd be able to shoot any sci-fi thing. You could be able to create any sets you want, you know, using this. They use like, I forgot the name of the game operating system, but they use it.
I think it's the Unreal Engine.
The Unreal Engine. Which they just came out with Unreal Engine 5, that it creates all these different lighting effects and stuff. It's pretty amazing to where you can actually create little practical things on set, and then your background, it moves with the camera.
Yeah.
You know, the focal length of the camera is affected. It's such amazing technology to where that is the new bullet time. That's the stuff that I'm constantly wowed about, because when you look at it, it looks very realistic. It's not like the bad green screen that sort of takes you out of it. You act, and the actors, it helps them act because they feel like they're in an environment.
It kind of reminds me just a little bit of in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the sequence with the apes. That was all done front projection, so they basically was through camera live on set, but you had to put set pieces to hide the seam at the bottom. And it's the same thing in The Mandalorian. The only downside of the LED screen is you have to have rocks and stuff that's part of the foreground to cover up the bottom of the screen where it's there. But it really reminded me a lot of 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's a better, cooler way to pull that off.
I look forward to
pretty
seeing
sure
the
if you're
consumer
noticing
version
the
of it.
rocks, you're failing as a storyteller.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm going to be looking for them, though. Hey, can I finish?
God.
First of all, thank you all for being here. Can I finish up by asking about some of your future projects and what kind of effects are you thinking of incorporating into them? I'm going to start with Sierra. Once we're allowed to have projects again.
I'm down for anything at this point. I'm sculpting and just trying to hone my craft so that I can be of service to you guys if you ever need anything. But just creating, I'm just going to keep creating in my house for as long as I need to. And then.
But Sierra, you do have a project coming up that I'm.
And I'm so devastated that I forgot because of the coronavirus. But we have an anthology with Christine and Sick Chick Flicks that I'm very excited about, that I've wrote 2 scripts for, and I'm directing my scripts, and I'm doing whatever small effects need to be in my scripts and other scripts if need be. And I'm very excited about that.
There'll be lots of practical effects in those. Looking forward to that again, and being able to get out of the house. Christine, I guess she gave it away, huh?
Well, I mean, yeah, we're doing an anthology. We were just getting ready to start fundraising for it when all this happened. So,
and this was you giving up the director's seat to give some other folks some other women filmmakers an opportunity to direct under your valuable guidance.
I want them to walk a mile in my shoes.
Yeah.
So.
But you've also been toying with another Poe inspired tale.
Yes. It's going to be like a mini feature, and I swear this was like before everything happened. The Mask of the Red Death was going to be my next Poe film.
What could be more topical? Yeah.
Well,
so that's
it writes itself.
Not true to life at all.
No.
Tom, what have you got? You've been taking some time off schooling yourself.
Yes, I still have my senior year of college coming up, and 1 season left of eligibility to play football.
Amazing.
And I'm capitalizing on that. In the meantime, I will be assisting Christine Parker's team on the Sick Chick Flicks in any way, shape, form they see fit.
You're going to play big guy number 3 in a lot of the stories.
Yes, and backdrop number 2, sweaty guy at bar,
knob wrangler, whatever's needed.
Exactly.
Christopher, I think
I wasn't done. I had a list.
Well, of course, yeah. Go on.
Reek Havoc's is. I just got a script from Reek Havoc Pictures. They're got a feature length in store. That's all I can say right now at this point, according to the NDA, and I'm willing to sign any more future NDAs that'll actually let me keep my mouth shut.
Well, there is a law that says all indie films made in North Carolina must have Thomas Gore in them. So
that is true.
You'll be busy. Christopher.
Hopefully we'll be able to screen Back or Creep at some point at a festival. We'll see about that.
Don't talk about that yet.
But we actually created Back or Creep as sort of a proof of concept to sort of sell a feature. And so actually my producer Amanda Stone and I are actually co-writing the feature. And so we've started working on that, mapping it out and writing that. So that's definitely something that we're working on. We actually, because of our private screening, we actually have an investor.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But we have to sort of like put everything together to sell it more to him. So that's cool. But yeah, other than that, I think now I'm sort of kicking my butt into gear, trying to be more creative. And I've actually been talking to my friend Vanessa on to write to co-write a podcast horror comedy series that I'd like to turn into maybe a cartoon at some point, like Rick and Morty.
Wow.
But right now we're just going to sort of mapping out that series. And then also I may create a quarantine short, trying to see if I can make something with people stuck in their homes.
What do you advise?
Nightmares Film Festival is doing a shut-in shorts. They have a shut-in shorts category.
Oh, really?
That if it's, I forgot the link of it, but you can submit shorts to that if you created something.
We've done 4 so far.
Yeah, so there you go. It's only $5 to submit it to. It's a last minute thing they created to sort of help those people because they're not really sure what's going to happen. I know it's a little bit later in the year, but they're not sure if,
Well, thanks for the heads up on that.
Yeah. So any filmmakers out there, if you're listening to this, if you have something you created in your house by yourself or somehow with other people, but I have an idea that would work with other people that I have connections with and stuff that I can sort of create. So I'm working on like a short idea for that I'd like to create for that. But yeah, I think right now, I think it's the best time to create. I think if you go online, there's a little video that Joe Bob Briggs posted from his recent.
I posted it myself today.
I think that if you're a filmmaker, just do it. Don't call yourself aspiring. I won't say what he said, but you're not aspiring. You're a director or a filmmaker or a writer or artist or whatever. Just do stuff. Don't be limited by what the world thinks you need. Just do it and create something. And I think right now is a good time to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Richard. When things start easing up?
I'm going to do a shameless plug for a film. Mostly what I'm doing these days, I'm trying to work more as a producer and develop projects and find good properties to do. But I'm working primarily as a post supervisor and visual effects supervisor. And we have a film called Becky, which is opening worldwide June 5th. And it stars Kevin James, who's mostly known for his comedy, but in this he plays a serious, heavy villain, and Lulu Wilson from the Annabelle films and The Haunting of Hill House. And it's from the directors who did Bushwick, which if you didn't see that's an amazing little film. And it's basically, I think it's a horror film that a lot of people are going to be talking about after it comes out. It's one I'm quite excited about, and I hope everyone will look for it when it comes out. Becky. starring Kevin James.
Thank you.
Oh,
It
Thank
looks
you.
amazing.
The trailer looks amazing, and Kevin James.
Phenomenal.
That's like a career-changing role. I think it looks great, folks. Christine, Sierra, Tom, Christopher, Richard. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
We could have done this for hours, but it was
Yeah.
great listening to y'all. I love you all. I wish I could see you in person.